y'all, it's Jana. If you're new to Grief Out Loud, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. We're coming up on Grief Out Loud's 10th birthday, and if you'd like to help get the party started early, make sure you're subscribed or following the show in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And as a bonus, we'd love for you to give us a rating and a review. It's December, and for a lot of folks, it's a month that comes with traditions. One of those traditions is our annual Holidays and Grief episode. We've been doing them since 2018, so there are a few to choose from. This year's conversation is with Anna Salazar-Walsh, who was a longtime volunteer at Dougy Center and is now the staff coordinator for our Esperanza group for Spanish-speaking families, and is also an MSW intern with our program. In other words, she knows a lot about grief from a professional standpoint, but not surprisingly, also the personal. When Anna was just 19, her father died in a mountain climbing accident. But she had already been grieving him for 2 years when he left their family to start a new one with a woman he had fallen in love with. This means Anna and I got to talk about the first holiday season after he left, and then the first one after he died, both of which were shadowed by grief. The other grief scene about the holidays for Anna is connected to growing up in Spain with her father and then moving to the States when she started college, which was the same year that he died. We talk about how awkward those first few Christmases were, and about how now, as a mother to her own children, she's starting to find ways to bring her father's memory into their holiday traditions. Anna, welcome to Grief Out Loud. Thank you for continuing the tradition we have at Dougy Center of each year having a conversation around grief and the end of the calendar year holidays with somebody who's on staff at the Dougy Center. So thank you for stepping into that role this year.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for thinking that I would have an interesting story to tell.
Well, speaking of your story, you hold many roles in your life and at Dougy Center and in school and all the places. And so I was wondering how you want to introduce yourself today.
So I think it's easiest to just go chronologically of like how I've been involved in the Dougy Center. So I started as a Dougy Center volunteer facilitator like 6.5, almost 7 years ago. Fast forward to last spring, I was offered a position as a group coordinator for the Esperanza program, which is the Spanish-speaking support group. And then this year, I am also in my final year of my master's in social work program. As part of that program, I'm also doing my advanced year practicum at the Dougy Center, which means I'm spending so much more time at the Dougy Center than I ever have, even though I've been involved with the Dougy Center for so many years.
Well, lucky us, very, very lucky us. And listeners, as I mentioned, this is a tradition. We have many episodes in the past 4 to 5 years of talking with Dougy Center staff folks about grief and the end of the year holidays. If you're looking for an episode that's more like, here's some tips and suggestions for what to do for yourself or for kids, or if you're a professional supporting others, I'll link in the show notes to some of those. This conversation with Anna today is going to be really about your personal experience, your lived experience of being a teen and a young adult, and now as a older young adult, as a mom and a wife, of celebrating, particularly Christmas we're going to be talking about, even though there's many, many other holidays that happen around this time of the year, and doing that with grief as part of the holiday list of things that are going on. So listeners, just to know, this is really a lived experience interview. If you're looking for those more professional tips and suggestions, I'll link to those in the show notes. So Anna, take us back to this time of being a teenager, and what was it like growing up with your dad in Spain, where you lived?
Yeah. So I think to really set the stage, I have to go back to like before I was a teenager, because I feel like I did have like a really unique connection with my dad. So my family was very non-traditional because my mother was from the US and my dad was from Spain, and they met in their early 20s, got married. We all lived in southern Spain together. And I have an older sister who is 2 years older than me. As a family unit, we were not very much like your typical Southern Spanish family, in that, my mother was American, and that already. It was like a bunch of, she brought a lot of weird things and ways of being in the world along with that. And then my dad was also like really not typical because he was pretty much obsessed with mountain climbing. And that was like his passion. And almost everything he did in life revolved around mountain climbing and being able to do his mountain climbing. My parents also didn't really follow very traditional gender norms, which is somewhat common for that generation in Spain, but still like not terribly common. And then also my dad and my mom would spend a lot of time apart because he would go on big, long mountain climbing expeditions. He was also in the military, so sometimes he would have to travel for that. And then my mom and my sister and I would come to the US in the summer and spend our summers here with my mom's family, which is Irish American and very, very different from my Spanish family. So I kind of grew up in almost three worlds, I feel like, because I grew up in Spain and then I grew up in the US, like in the summer months. And then there was just kind of this microcosm that was our family that was just like a weird mix of different things. And one of the things that we did differently was Christmas and holidays in general. I think I'm probably going to focus mainly on Christmas because that's the main thing we celebrated. Thanksgiving was pretty much non-existent in my house because we lived in Spain, so it wasn't celebrated in our community. And my mother was from the US, but it just wasn't a significant holiday for her. So we never did anything. But then for Christmas, we would always have our own little nuclear family celebration where, again, we would kind of like come up with our own traditions and own ways to celebrate. So we would always put up a Christmas tree and we would have a nativity scene. And lots of times we would pick a day that we were going to do like our family big Christmas dinner and open our presents. We would also have like the days that we were going to go see the rest of the Spanish family and do kind of the more traditional like Christmas dinner and everything in Madrid. Or actually Christmas Eve dinner is like the really big one in Spain.
Anna, you mentioned that your family didn't really follow traditions in general, but not like traditional gender roles and things like that. I'm curious, what kind of Christmas dad was your dad? Like what were his things at Christmas?
I would say his things at Christmas were the food, really good food. We always had lamb and we always got really, really good shellfish because we lived near the coast in southern Spain and we would take it up to the rest of the family in Madrid. And then also every Christmas break included some kind of like outdoor winter adventure for him because it was kind of his opportunity to get some time off from his job where he could train in winter conditions for like more than 2 days at a time. So for him, because again, everything always came back to the mountain and his training and everything. That's mainly what I remember about him. He wasn't very involved with like decorating or presents or anything. That was all my mom. And it was all because of that, probably more American leaning in our household.
Does it feel accurate to say that was kind of consistent for your dad's level of engagement with you all when it wasn't the holidays too? Was he absent often with his mountain climbing?
So he was, and it's interesting because I was just thinking about this recently and thinking about like what memories do I have from my dad when I was a kid. And I remember him as being kind of this like really playful, silly dad, but not really necessarily as much of a parent. Like he wasn't the disciplinarian in our household at all. And I remember one time him trying to discipline me and my sister, and we were just like beside ourselves with laughter because it was just like so funny. And he had like cute names for us, for our family, and me specifically. He called Garbancito, which is a storybook character in Spain, but it actually means little chickpea. And it's like this little tiny boy that I can't remember the story, but he like goes to market on a cow's head. I don't know, but I was the baby in the family, and I was definitely like his baby, and we were very close. I feel like I felt a strong emotional bond with him. I also remember like physical affection. I remember cuddling with him on the couch while he watched the telenovela, and I would like put my head on him and I could listen to his food digesting, which maybe is kind of gross, but that's like a very visceral memory I have. I think also I had a bit of a different relationship with him than my sister did because I was also more interested in kind of the outdoorsy stuff and more active activities. So I remember like once a week we would ride our bikes to the rock gym. And I have a lot of those memories. And I also remember always having a lot of anxiety because I knew that mountain climbing was so risky and he would spend like months at a time. By the time I was in grade school, he was every other year or so, he was doing a big expedition to like the Himalayas or something to climb like a big mountain where, you know, people die regularly. And I was very aware of that. And I remember having dreams where he was either injured or killed, but also I felt very close to him. And somehow that kind of like that relationship, that closeness feels like it became awkward when I was a teenager, like even before anything else happened, which we'll get into everything that happened.
Say more about what felt awkward about it.
I think maybe like he just didn't know how to connect with a teenage girl, maybe. I don't know. But there was definitely like I feel like some distance started between us probably around when I was like 13, I want to say, but
When the adolescence arrives at
when
that
the
time.
adolescence arrived. And I think because I was a tomboy as a kid too, I think I stopped being as much of a tomboy around that age. And maybe because I wasn't like I school also became harder. So like between my identity shifting from kind of that tomboyish, like I want to be outside riding my bike, getting dirty, and then also school becoming a lot more intense. Thinking about it now, it probably came as much from my end as from his of like that distancing.
And then in the course of this more sort of like natural, maybe reconfiguring of your dad and you and your relationship through adolescence and maybe shifting in your identity, something more dramatic happened in your junior year high school. You call it high school in Spain, or do you call it secondary school?
So I guess it would be secondary school. In Spain, there's like obligatory secondary school, which would be up to the year before that. And then the last 2 years of high school are not like obligatory education. And it's bachillerato, which is baccalaureate, I think would be like but it's basically like the last 2 years of high school. And it's sort of equivalent to getting a high school diploma if you're planning to do university. In the midst of that, my dad, well, my parents both like sat me down one evening, and my dad was, I mean, they were both very serious. So I could tell they were going to tell me something very serious. And my mother said, "Your father has something to say to you." And my initial thought was, "Oh, he's dying." Um, but what he said, I feel like was almost worse for me in that moment, because he said that he had fallen in love with someone and he was going to leave to go like start a family with this other person because he was in love. And it turns out he'd been having an affair part of the previous year, which explains a lot of kind of like increased awkwardness that I had noted before then. He had been planning to leave for a while, and he had been planning to wait until I turned 18, which again, I feel like my dad was very smart in many ways, but he did not really have a whole lot of emotional wherewithal or maturity or like understanding. In his mind, it's just like, oh, well, she's going to be 18 and then she's an adult. And then it's like, okay, if I move out of the house, even though I was still I still had a year and a half of high school left. I felt like until that moment, I still very much like held my dad on a pedestal. Like I thought he was this remarkable human. And he is a remarkable human, and I can accept that now. But again, like he had his strengths and he had his areas for growth, I guess.
So, Anna, your dad delivers this news in November, and then it's barely a month later, and you're into that first holiday, that first Christmas since he leaves the family, which comes with its own type of grief. And what do you remember about that first Christmas?
So I I mean, I just remember it being very, very awkward. I feel like up until then, all of our family Christmases had been special. Like we had done our usual traditions. And that was kind of the first Christmas where we didn't. And I kind of had this feeling that I think I've carried throughout my adulthood that I'm the only one that really, really cares about making every Christmas special. um, but at the same time, that Christmas, like I was very, very aware of my mother's grief and her emotions. And she's grieving like her whole future, her retirement plans, everything. I don't actually remember if we did anything special, like just between us, like my mom and I, or my sister was in college at that point in the United States. And I do remember her coming back because that's one of the memories I do have from that Christmas. The big first memory I remember from that Christmas is going just me and my mom alone to visit my dad's family in Madrid, and how incredibly awkward that was. And I could just like sense how much pain and misery my mom was in. The only emotion I remember experiencing myself was awkwardness, but I'm sure awkwardness, I think, is a stand-in for a lot of other emotions. Um, and then I remember getting there, and we like my grandmother, who is or was an absolute saint, just the sweetest woman in the world, like offering us food and doing the usual thing when we get there. I remember my mom barely eating, and then after that, telling me, I don't know if telling me or suggesting, but it was a suggestion that I remember as her telling me, "Oh, we're going for a walk," and then like walking through Madrid, and it was like, and then we went to this chain called Veeps. It's like a bookstore slash fast food place that's like very American. They would have books in English, and they had like typical American like fries, and then I remember just like we ordered a bunch of like fried food and ate it after like being at my grandma's house and not really engaging with like the food that she was giving us. And I just remember feeling so uncomfortable. And I think part of it was just like the kind of the tension that I felt between the two cultures, especially like as I got older and my dad left, and then like I went to college. And I think that was a moment where I like felt it very deeply, where like we're here like completely disconnecting from Spain and Spanish things. And I think for my mom, like she probably really just wanted comfort. Which I don't blame her at all for feeling incredibly uncomfortable in this space with this family, which is her family, but like kind of having to renegotiate that relationship. Like, to what extent are they still her family when like she's related to them by marriage and my dad's done this horrible thing?
Yeah. So that was the first Christmas after your dad left your immediate family.
Yes.
And you had one more Christmas after that, which you said no one in your family can remember. It's in
no
the
one
void.
remembers at all.
And then that next June, so a year and a half later, your dad dies. And I wondered what you wanted to share about his death.
So yeah, at that point, it had been about a year and a half since he left, and my little brother was born. He had a baby in his new relationship. Our relationship, again, was awkward. I feel like that's just the one word I go to because I think that was the only like actual thought or sensation or emotion about the situation that I had at the time, that I was aware of or that I could express. But we would meet for coffee or tea like every week or every other. I think it was supposed to be every week, but it didn't really happen every week. I didn't reach out to him unless like he called me to schedule. I mean, honestly, I think I was angry at him, though. Again, I wouldn't have used those words because that would have been more than awkward if I admitted I was angry. And I remember always feeling really uncomfortable when he gave me gifts. Like I know he probably definitely gave me like a Christmas gift both of those Christmases. And I just remember feeling like, I don't want you to give me a gift. Like, this isn't, I don't know. I almost wanted to reject it, but then he'd like give me things I wanted. And then I was like, well, but this doesn't make me like feel any better about what you did or respect you anymore. And our last conversation was him getting upset because I had said that it didn't matter what grade I got on the kind of the end of high school test that everyone does, because I was planning to go to to college in the US and had already been admitted, and like this test isn't part of my GPA technically as far as like the American universities are concerned. But for Spain, they combine your score on this test with your GPA from the last 2 years of high school to determine like what program you can go study at university. So my dad was very upset that I didn't care about this exam. And I think looking back on it, I know that it's because he was upset that I was going to go to the US for school. And probably some fear of like, we've had this very awkward, again, relationship for this last year and a half. And I think he was really probably afraid to lose me completely and not have a relationship with me at all, potentially, which is what happened with my sister. So that's kind of like where we ended things. And then one day we get the news that he died, or they found his body in the mountains. And it was like right by our house too. I mean, the mountains near our house where he would go train every weekend. So it was like a place he knew really well. And like I said, I always had a lot of anxiety when I was younger about him like going to K2 or Everest, but we never had that much anxiety because he knew these mountains like the back of his hand. Like he trained there every single weekend. And the main thing I can remember the awkwardness of our entire relationship almost just melting away. And I remember feeling relief, because for me, that meant I wasn't going to have to navigate this relationship anymore. I wasn't going to have to navigate this relationship from another country in a different time zone, pre-smartphone, pre-social media.
What did it mean to you for relief to be the main emotion that you felt after hearing about your dad's death?
I think, I mean, at that point, I was pretty emotionally disconnected, like across the board, from like being a very sensitive child to like, I, I had a hard time really experiencing any emotions at that point in my life. So I remember more having thoughts than emotions. And I remember thinking like, this isn't normal. Um, and I remember thinking like, am I like some kind of monster, like for feeling this way? Uh, like, what does it say about me as a person that I'm mostly just feeling like this huge weight off my shoulders because I don't have to deal with this relationship that's been kind of a huge weight on my shoulders for this last year and a half, because I don't know how to navigate this relationship. And it's really weird. And my dad, who was like the super important person in my life, who I loved so much and thought the world of, did this horrible thing that broke apart, basically shattered our world, my world. And our little nuclear family was like such an important part of my world, because it was this space that was like neither Spanish nor American, and we were just ourselves. And yeah, I didn't have to deal with figuring. I mean, I thought I didn't have to deal with it. Years of therapy point to the contrary, but at that point, it was like I can just go to college, and this isn't going to have to be like a part of my life when I go to college, like figuring out what I'm going to do about my dad. And I don't have to feel guilty for not contacting him, uh, if that's what happens, and I don't have to figure out like how to contact him. Like I feel like our conversations and interactions in person were awkward, but at least we had like tea or coffee or something. I usually would end up talking about school and grades because that was just kind of the most comfortable thing for us to connect over when I got older. Yeah, I have no idea what we would have talked about. given that we didn't want to talk about real things. Like neither of us, I think, was in a place where we wanted to actually have difficult or deep or meaningful conversations. So,
And with you being that age and that shift in your relationship, in some sense, still feeling pretty new, I imagine it was hard to, in your mind, think about a time when it could be different or better. It probably felt like it's just going to continue to be this level of awkward forever.
yeah, pretty much. And I think because my dad was like that, like it's I don't know. Now I like to think that maybe we would have had like he would have shown some emotional growth and we would have like worked through it together and maybe he would have joined like family therapy or something the way that my mom did with me later in my 20s and that we would be in a different place. But at the time, like I didn't think I was ever going to talk about it. Like I didn't ever see myself becoming like this open, vulnerable, emotional person because that's just I had learned at a young age that that wasn't really safe and I had adapted really well. Like I had a very hard and efficient shell around me by the time I was 19.
So, continuing what I'm going to guess is more of the awkward theme, let's talk about that first Christmas after your dad died. You've had two now without him as part of your
Yes.
immediate family. I mean, he's still part of your immediate family, but he had left your immediate family. And now we're at this third Christmas since he died. And what was different about that year for you?
So that was the first Christmas where I officially wasn't like my primary residence wasn't in Spain anymore. My mom also moved to the US at the same time. I remember like more than anything the grief that I felt in that transition was more about like leaving Spain and fear of losing kind of the part of me that's Spanish or losing like my connection to Spain. So yeah, so I ended up going back to Christmas or back to Spain for that first Christmas after college. And again, for me, I think that was more about not losing my Spanish roots or kind of having this fear that I was going to become American or more American than Spanish.
And so, did you spend that with your dad's family then, since your mom was living in the States at that point?
So I did. I ended up so one of my friends that I made at college ended up wanting to come. So I ended up traveling with her. Um, and I did spend time with my family, with my dad's side of the family in Madrid. I can't remember what I did for like Christmas Day itself. I think I might have actually been in the US for Christmas Day itself and still like done something with my family here. But then I went to Spain because I wanted to make sure like that I got my Spain time in. And I spent time with my family and I definitely spent time with my friends as well. And I remember that very clearly. I remember my best friend was studying journalism in Seville at that point. And we stayed with her for several nights. And it was so cool for her to like show me her new apartment, her new life, because she had a boyfriend, all the bars she went to. I don't know. She was just like, it was really fun to hang out with her in Seville. And then I remember we went back to my hometown where I grew up, Jerez, and we met like a big crowd of like friends from high school met up there.
And I'm curious with that first Christmas, you spend maybe Christmas Day in the States with your mom, and then you go back to Spain with friends and a little bit with your dad's family. Were you conscious of this idea of like, oh, I'm grieving during this season?
No, not at all. I think I probably me going to see my dad's family probably felt like more of an obligation. Like I can't go back to Spain and not stop and see. And also like convenient wise or conveniency wise, like they are the people that I know in Madrid and it's easier to fly into Madrid. So it just like at the very least, like I have to spend a night there. Which is interesting because now when I go to Spain, like my family's, they're the first people I contact and I want to see. So, but yeah, in my mind, I think I was going back to see my friends and to hang out with my friends. It had nothing to do with my dad or my dad's death or my dad's family. I wouldn't have even had like the language to say I was experiencing like cultural grief or anything like that, or just grief in general. I would not have used that word to describe anything in my life.
So, fast forwarding then through the series of holidays, Christmases you've spent since that first one, at what point, if at any point, did grief start to become part of your experience, part of the way that you looked at the holidays in terms of grief around your dad?
Honestly, probably not until I had my own kids. Like I felt grief around kind of the magic and the specialness of like those early Christmases at home when our family was still our family. And definitely a sense of like no one else in the family really feels that way or thinks that it's like as important to do these traditions every year or to like get together every year. Yeah, and I'm actually not even sure like even that first Christmas with my own child whether I was like actively thinking about ways I'm incorporating my dad. I think it was more like what are the ways I'm incorporating Spanish culture. And it's interesting because I feel like I have much more actively worked on my cultural grief and incorporating that and making sure that that's a part of my life and that I feel connected to Spain and that like being Spanish is a part of my identity that I actively engage in a lot more than actively grieving my dad. I think a lot of the grief work that I've done around my dad has still happened in my head and it's maybe happened in like therapy contexts. And I think not until like very, very recently, like maybe the last couple of years, I've started to think about how am I actively kind of building a relationship with him now as an adult, with him not physically being present here. And someone, another Dougie Center colleague actually said the other day that one of the cool things about like being an adult and that having had a complicated relationship with your dad when they died and you were a teenager is that like instead of wondering what would the relationship have been, what could we have done, like instead of that thinking reframing it more as like since I'm the only one that's alive I get to decide what our relationship is now. So
It's one-sided in all the good ways.
exactly, and kind of seeing that as like I mean obviously like you know I'd be lying if I didn't say a part of me is still is going to wonder and wish and think about what it could have been like if he had survived and what how our relationship would have evolved because I do like to think that we would have figured it out. It makes me really sad to think about him like how he would be as a grandfather. He always made jokes about how young he looked too, which he was in really good shape and like he probably did look younger than his age, but he was very funny about like how he looked 25 when he was 47, um, which is the age he died at, I think. I think I've only in the last couple of years really thought about like me currently in the present day having a relationship with him rather than just like this is a story that's part of my past that I tell that my father isn't really a present figure in my life. And I think maybe that started when my oldest son, who just turned 3, maybe started becoming more aware. And like I have had a picture of my dad up in the living room for like quite a few years now, I think, like maybe 4 or 5 years. And like showing that picture to my son and saying like, oh, that's your abuelo Manolo. Because I imagine that's what he would have, my dad's name was Manolo and he would have called him abuelo. And introducing him as that kind of like made me aware of like, oh, like what is this relationship going to be now? And I think incorporating that into the holidays in a way that isn't just like, well, I'm going to incorporate this Spanish food or this Spanish tradition because I'm Spanish and I want to like keep those roots and that identity alive for my kids as well, who I speak to in Spanish 100% of the time, pretty much. And yeah, and I was thinking even just today of what what are some things very specific to him, like that I could do that would kind of keep that bond with him versus it just being kind of like, oh, we're going to celebrate Reyes and put our shoes out for the three kings when they come and stuff like that, which is more just kind of like incorporating mainstream Spanish holiday traditions into our little Southeast Portland house.
So, as we are approaching Christmas 2024, what's one thing that you were thinking of that you're hoping to bring into your traditions this year specific to your dad?
So one thing I was thinking of is the lamb, the leg of lamb that we had at Christmas was always a really big deal. And we always had leg of lamb, except one year that my mom ruined it by getting a little like piglet and I refused to eat it. And my husband typically makes lamb when we celebrate. And I've been vegetarian pretty much since I went to college. So I have not had any lamb since then. And I was actually thinking like, oh, what if I enjoy some lamb? Because I really like lamb. Most meat I don't really care for, but lamb is like it's a meat that I do really enjoy. Every time like my husband cooks it, I like smell it and I think like, oh, that smells so good and it brings so many memories, like that kind of very specific smell that it has that makes it different from other meats. And I was thinking like, what if I just enjoy like a little, probably a very little bit of lamb this year and use that as a way to connect because like we connected through food so much growing up and as a teen, like the main thing we did was like go get food together because I think that was the least awkward way to connect. So yeah, I've also been thinking about making like some of his favorite desserts as well. He had like a huge sweet tooth and dessert was a really important part of every single meal in our house. So yeah, I think most of the things I've thought about are like through food.
Which seems like such an appropriate, not appropriate, that's not the right word, but seems like a really beautiful interweaving of Spanish traditions because food is so culturally driven. And then things that are specific that you remember as a kid that your dad really enjoyed eating or cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. Or having cooked for him. Though he did actually cook too, which is another way he was different from other dads in Spain. I think just having, especially now that my 3-year-old is like speaking in full sentences and understanding things, I think just talking about him more and in a not like this isn't an awkward person that we don't talk about kind of way. Which I feel like with my mom and my sister, like we still don't really bring it up that much. Like we don't talk about him that much. My I know my mom tried desperately like those first years and my sister and I would just shut it down every time. um, and I feel like it's still just kind of a taboo subject.
I appreciate that, Anna, because I know there's probably a number of parents out there right now listening who are parents of teenagers who are heading into their first or second holiday since a parent has died and are thinking, well, I can't get these teens to talk about anything with me. And so
Yeah.
to say, don't lose hope. It might take 10 years, 15 years, 17 years, but
They might
perhaps
end up working at the Ducky Center.
But I appreciate the idea that our relationship to our grief, our relationship to our people who have died, and our relationship to both of those things in the context of, say, like a holiday can really continue to change over time, that we don't have to do it all or get it all right in that first holiday or that second holiday since someone has died, that there can still be openings to, as you said, build a relationship with your dad now or find ways to bring in things that are really specific to who he was in your family now with your children. So yeah, I'm grateful. And it's interesting. You started off saying we were kind of a non-traditional family. And I feel like we've had sort of a non-traditional grief at the holidays conversation, which seems apt given kind of how you were raised and how you grew up. So
Yeah, no, and like currently my family is also like we're my husband is Arab American and didn't even grow up celebrating most Christmases unless he was with his white American grandparents. so so kind of incorporating his complete like lack of experience with Christmas and and trying to like share how it's so magical with him because he just doesn't get it. But he always likes an excuse to make lamb. So, and I think, yeah. And then another thought I've had, not for this Christmas, but next Christmas is once I'm officially done with grad school and hopefully working, to go as a family to Spain for Christmas and take both of my kids, and maybe even like invite like my mother-in-law and my mom and my sister and actually do Christmas in Spain and be there for the holidays. Because that way you get like the smells and the lights and because the Spanish Christmas lights are different than American Christmas lights, though there are lights, and just like everything, the Spanish Christmas music, which is also different than American Christmas music.
To have that more immersive experience.
Yes, a more immersive experience than I can create in my home. So I have a playlist that's a combination of English/American Christmas music and Spanish Christmas music. So
you're trying your best with what you have.
I'm trying my
here.
best, but now my kid will only listen to like 2 songs, and it has to be those 2 songs, and anything else is too loud. So.
Well, Anna, I really am grateful for you taking time out of an amazingly busy schedule to have this conversation, to kind of unearth some memories maybe that you hadn't thought about in a long time, and to help bring, this like long range experience of grief and Christmas and the holidays to our listeners today. So really, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And listeners, as I said, I will list in the show notes links to all of the previous Grief in the Holidays episodes that we've done here at Grief Out Loud. Some are more specific suggestions. Some are more like our conversation today, just a exploration of the lived experience of grief and the holidays. So check those out. And as always, thank you as we come to the end of 2024. I'm really grateful for all the ways that you continue to show up for the show, to make it mean something. When you reach out to me and email me at griefoutloud@dougy.org, which is dougy.org, or if you share the show with someone else who you think might be helped by what we're talking about, or if you follow us or give us a rating or review, all those things really help the show continue to grow and expand and reach more people. So if you want to learn more about us, you can head to our website, dougy.org. You can find information about our local programming, all of our free and downloadable resources such as tip sheets and activity sheets, and of course, each and every episode of Grief Out Loud. I'm excited as always to share that the podcast is sponsored in part by the Chester Stephan Endowment Fund, and Grief Out Loud is a production of Dougy Center, the National Grief Center for Children and Families located in Portland, Oregon. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us again next time.